Hey, welcome to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further. My name is Jeremy, and I'm your host. And this is a podcast where we just want to ask the questions that we think that you would ask as it relates to Sunday's message. And as we do so, we hope that it helps you grow in your life and your faith. With that being said, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of the podcasts that are coming out. Not only that, hit the like button, because when you do so, it helps us help other people. And if you ever have a question about Sunday's content or about Overtime, you can submit those to overtime@npaustin.com, and we will be sure to get to those in future podcasts. So with that being said, here's a quick recap of Sunday, and then we're going to jump into our conversation today.
The gospel writer of John quotes Jesus as saying, "The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, but I," speaking of Jesus, "have come that they may have life and have it to the full." You have to want it, and then you have to lean into it, and then you have to pursue it. In 2016, isolation tied obesity in the #1 health concern for Americans. But there are reasons we don't want to do this. There are reasons I don't want to do this, and there are reasons you might be hesitant to do it, and that's what we want to look at real quick. I want to look at 5 things that we maybe tell ourselves that kind of keep us from community. If part of fullness of life is being connected to community, and if we can have fewer regrets, get more of that may have life, and experience that fullness Jesus is talking about, we can't afford to not get connected. Now, I could literally spend all day trying to convince you the value of connection and community, but to be honest, stories are way better. So I want us to listen to one.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Welcome to Overtime.
Thanks.
And it's actually funny that we are doing a podcast today, because I haven't listened to podcasts in a while now, just because I've been listening to books. But what just popped up on my feed today were 2 of my favorite people on a podcast together, Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson.
Oh,
and
really?
I was like, awesome, I'm going to check this out. It's 4 hours and 10 minutes long.
Oh,
So
wow.
wait, is this a new one? Like, did you record a new one?
Yeah, just because I think
Okay.
Jordan Peterson is in town doing like a speech at Moody Theater.
Yeah.
He probably recorded with Joe Rogan here in Austin.
Oh, have you listened to it, or have you started it?
No. Well, I started it, but I didn't get in.
So
very
I
far.
get, like, his stuff pops up for me all the time. Like, their conversations pop up on YouTube all the time. So, like, I see all the little shorts that he's done, like, in the past and stuff.
I really
pretty
like.
interesting.
Yeah, I like both of those guys a lot.
So now you can't wait to
Yeah.
listen. Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's going to take you a month and a
I
half
know.
to get through the whole thing.
It's like, I got to be a dad and husband and all that stuff. So
Listen to it in the car on the way home.
yes. But anyways, I was thinking about that as we were starting. Welcome to Overtime. For those of you who don't know and are listening or watching, I'm sitting here with Josh Montoya and Christy Gordon, and I wanted to give a quick second for y'all to introduce yourselves. And maybe either what you do at Northpoint or what you used to do at Northpoint. I don't know what's easier. But yeah, Christy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Christy Gordon, and
And you've been on the podcast before.
I have been on the podcast before with my husband Keith.
Yep.
And I am in digital marketing now and help with events. And part of the connection team, did some Before Austin stuff. So just kind of moved around and done a couple of different things.
And I will just point out, if you've seen any Before Austin things at this church, it is all because of Christy, in my opinion, because
It's true.
You have led up like every single like Austin Angels thing, like all of these connections we have with nonprofits in the community is your thumbprint. So thank you.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I love it. I did not do that alone for sure, but yeah, it's super fun.
Well, on the outside, it looks like you're just doing it all by yourself.
Just make it look like good. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's tons of people, but
Yeah.
it's super fun.
Cool. Josh?
I'm Josh. Thank you for introducing me.
And Josh is, for those of you who don't know, Josh is the guy Buck and I always reference.
Yeah,
in the
there's ever
middle
a
of-
dead spot, and the thing is because I yelled something without a microphone from behind the cameras over there. This is the first time I've ever been on it, so this is kind of exciting.
Yep.
But I used to be the media director, came in under you, took over the media director role for I don't know how long I did that, and then over the summer, we formed the digital team, and so now me and Christy are on the digital team, and I create content for the digital team, so that's what I do.
Yep. And you interject every now and then in Buck and I's podcast, and
That's the funnest thing. In my head all the time, I'm like, oh, this would be really funny to say, and then I say it, and it's
sometimes
like
you say it, sometimes
awkward
you don't.
pause. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can actually hear me over there when I yell stuff at you guys, but
I do have
It's
headphones
fine.
on, so. But anyways, so we're right in the middle of a series called No Regrets, and we just did part 3 with Jen Mazzola, and we do these messages twice a year talking about the importance of community and connection in our life for both our marriages, our lives, our faith, all of it. And we do it twice a year because we believe it's that important. And we have a tendency, especially as a, American culture, to fall out of community. We lean that way. We don't necessarily lean towards like, oops, I have all these great people around me and like who love me and care for me. We're much more individualistic. And so we spend 2 Sundays a year talking about it and encouraging people to take that step into community group, which is just, kind of in the church structure way, the vehicle in which we create opportunities for connection and people growing in their faith. And so, we spend time talking about it twice a year. And so we spent 30 minutes on Sunday talking about the idea that like connection is important. Like if you don't want to have regret in life, you want to have fewer regrets in life, you got to have people around you to help, one, prevent you from regrets or celebrate great moments or to laugh with, or somebody to keep you from doing something maybe that's going to hurt you in the long run that you don't see at the time. It's that whole iron sharpens iron. And what I don't think people need necessarily more of is to be convinced of that. I think we can intellectually maybe argue a little bit like, well, do we need people? But then you just look at, human civilization and tribe mentality. Like we are designed to be doing life with other people. And so instead of kind of honing in a little bit more on that, I wanted to hone in on y'all's own personal experiences and stories with connection, with community, and really just, instead of talking about it, like dive into it in an experiential way and go, okay, what does this actually look like? What does this feel like? What does this mean? In hopes that for some people who are actually maybe taking that step into community right now or have fallen out of community or are just missing community, they can go, oh yeah, I remember. That's what that feels like. That's what that is. And so want to hone in on a couple different questions today, and then y'all can just kind of answer them back and forth however you want to. One of the things that I wanted to talk about first is just your experiences with community. And so growing up, coming to church, maybe Northpoint, or maybe you didn't live in Austin at some point, but what have been y'all's individual experiences with being connected to other people?
You first.
I would say, of course, I grew up going to church for the most part. Elementary school, middle school, we moved here from Michigan. I had a hard time finding a church, so kind of didn't have my group of, church friends at that point. Really through high school, same thing, didn't really have that connection. Went to college, and there's always been something in me that I really missed that group of friends and that kind of connection. So when I was in college, I found the student center. We grew up Methodist, so found that in kind of some community group there. So did that on my own there. And really, that was a great time for me to do that because I was really struggling in college with who am I, where do I fit in, what do I believe, where, I knew how I'd been raised, but, it wasn't relational. It wasn't my choice necessarily. It was just kind of like what you did kind of thing. So it became a little bit more relational in college, graduated college, worked a few jobs, moved around, met Keith, and he was not interested in church at all. But I really loved him, knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, went against, it's not aligned with these really important basic things. But I now know God had a hand in all that, and I can see that now, which, has become really glue for us.
Yeah.
But
and quick question there.
Yeah.
Is Keith shorter than you?
Yes, he
Man.
is.
That's the coolest thing
Is
I've
that
ever
just
heard.
He totally is.
Oh man,
He totally is.
Yeah. So I just think on the outside, I just think it's a great thing for like men and women and marriage. Well,
it's so funny. We joke about that because we didn't meet. It was before online stuff, and we had talked on the phone a few times, and so we didn't know what each other looked like. I had met him or just gotten his name through somebody that I worked with that said, "Oh, my roommate works in marketing. You should give him a call, and he can help you try to find a job." I was like, "Oh, that'd be great." So we started talking. And then, it became more personal. And he's like, we should go, like, let's meet. Let's have dinner or something. I'm like, okay. So I said, I'll be wearing this so he'd know what, who I was when I walked up. And then when I walked up, he was sitting down and he stood up. He goes, "Damn, you are tall." Those are the first words he's ever spoken to me. So,
Nice.
Yeah. But obviously it was meant to be. So it was great.
Well, I can ask that question because I'm 3 inches shorter than my wife, Ashley. And so
I had to qualify that.
Yeah, just in case nobody knows.
It's like the
never
only
seen
thing that
us.
people know about you.
Yeah, right. That's pretty much it. So, but yeah, it's a funny thing whenever Ashley, when I met her when in high school, I think I've shared this story before at some point, but she gave me a list of qualities for a husband that she had written growing up at some point, and like number 1, 2, or 3 was like, my husband must be taller than me, and I was
That's
like,
so funny.
bummer. And
Yep.
then I was like, wait a second, I think she likes me, and I'm shorter. So what's going on? And now we're married.
Yeah,
and that was like
didn't matter.
12 years ago. So
Yep.
Molly and I
Anyway.
are the exact same height, so not quite there.
you're missing out, man.
Yeah,
Something really great.
In the world.
Okay. Anyways, I interrupted you.
Anyway, no, totally fine. So we went to church here and there, first part of our relationship. Anyway, we knew we wanted to start a family. We relocated back here because my family is here, and kind of church shopped a while. Ended up finding Northpoint, but really sat in the back row for, almost 7 years, 6-7 years, and never joined a group. And so we kept hearing the group Sunday. In fact, when we know it's coming up, Keith would be like, "Oh my gosh, it's about that time. Like, we're not going."
It's about
like
that.
like we just
It's
skip
been
out on
it's
it.
been a lot of Sundays since they talked about
absolutely.
groups.
We're like, "Ooh, no, that's not for us. Like, no, that's not for us. Anyway, so the first group that I joined was a women's group, and that was a great, first step for us as a couple, because it gave me what I needed, and gave him time to figure
Space.
that out.
Yeah.
So that worked really well for us. Did that for, I think I was in a couple of different groups, and then at the same time, we started having some marriage issues. We were having some issues with the kids. Like, just some things were going kind of sideways, and we didn't know how we were going to get through that, what we were going to do. Really just a bumpy time for us. And we were still coming to church, still sitting in the back row, and there was a message series that Buck was on, What Happy Couples Know. And there was something in there that kind of struck a chord with us. And then he said, "Oh, by the way, we're starting a specialized group." And, kind of talked a little bit about that. And Keith leaned over to me and he's like, I think we should join a group. And I'm like, who are you? Because this was the furthest thing. I was open to it. He was definitely not. But it was a short-term group. So I think for him being hesitant to join, to know that there was a short-term group he could kind of go and not be committed to for too long. And he knew, like, we don't know what else to do. This is for our marriage. This could save our marriage kind of thing. Let's do it. And so our first experience together was a short-term group.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Cool. Josh, what about you? What's been your experience with community growing up recently, being a newly married man?
Yeah. So I grew up in kind of the church world. I've been going to church for my entire life. So, all through high school, all that stuff, went to every single youth group event, all of the camps, did all the things, was always in some kind of small group. But I think the interesting thing in sports and that kind of community, there's the camaraderie of, football, and I was on the swim team for, forever. I think one of the most interesting things about all of that, though, is the close one-on-one relationships I developed out of those things. I think that's kind of been the major takeaway from community as a whole, is being in different kinds of groups growing up, and then finding the one or two people that you really meld with, and continuing to meet with them, hang out with those people outside of the group setting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I came to Northpoint when I was a senior in high school, I think, and I don't know if we're gonna get to this later or not, but what Jen talked about on Sunday when she mentioned the been there, done that sort of thing. My perception of community before I had come to Northpoint was I've been there, I've done that, I've been part of all the little things. I didn't really get anything out of it from a faith perspective. It's I'm just not interested in community anymore. I'll figure it out on my own. That was totally my attitude. And so I had been invited to Northpoint, invited to Inside Out and all that stuff. And I was I'm just not going to do it. And then ended up coming for whatever reason and really connected with my small group as a senior. So I only had 1 year with those guys, but then now, one of my best friends, a few of my best friends actually came out of that group, which is pretty cool. So,
Some of your groomsmen.
Yeah. 3 out of the 7 were in my group in high school. So
yeah,
and we're still friends and still hang out and still talk. And even the people that don't live in Austin anymore, anytime they're in town and we're both in town, we go grab a beer or something, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, that is cool.
And then now it's just been a habit to stay in, being around people, being known by people, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I'll add mine on there too, because I think it's a little bit different just because I didn't grow up in church at all. I was a creaster through and through, which is a Christmas, Easter attender, but not even by choice. I wasn't hey, Mom, Dad, let's go to church. It's Christmas, Easter. I think they felt like we should. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we all have a list of shoulds in our life, and that was a list of should. And so, you know, I think that's when we went. And so I grew up with like kind of my group of guys, middle school buds. And honestly, I loved middle school because I was in band, and that was when I like had the most connection, was really like on like band trips and stuff. It's like really geeky, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I started asking actual questions about God, you know, found Northpoint, came on the second Sunday, and Northpoint was open. And then somehow just got dropped in a group, ended up bringing some of my buddies with me. And I do feel like I hit the jackpot in terms of like small group leaders that were landed in our group at the time. Jeff Brown, who's now been mentioned quite a bit, you know, if you've been coming on Sunday for a little while. We did the whole interview with him last September about his story and stuff, and just he still texts me to this day. You know, I ran into him at Red Horn last week, and we had like a 15-minute sidebar conversation, and you know, I definitely hit like a one in the lifetime kind of guys. Yeah. And so I think that really solidified for me, like, oh, this connection thing is really important. And then I think
it's interesting you say that. I wonder if like small group leaders just in general have that kind of like vibe, because I feel the same way about my small group leaders. And I still talk to them and text them every once in a while and see them on Sunday and, you know, have conversations. I went, one of them, Gary Cremines, he took me to, actually, I can't remember, right after I turned 21 or something, like, took me to go, you know, bought me a beer or something.
Oh, yeah.
We traveled to Texas TCU game together, like for a weekend. Like, I don't know, we've just done like all kinds of crazy. So I feel the exact same way. So I don't know, that's just interesting.
I don't think
anyways,
small
continue.
group leaders know like the
impact.
Yeah, I don't think
have.
they know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think because they're doing it out of a place of love, and that's just what, I mean, God gifted them in that way.
Yeah.
Like I think about, you know, my daughter's small group leader and like the impact she's had on her life, and like I don't think she would ever realize that.
Yeah, because it's just like not easy. You know, being a leader is like, I don't know if this is making a difference, but it made a huge impact.
Does,
so
For sure.
I get that for sure.
For sure. Yeah, and I think the rest of my experience with community and people probably is more, I could talk about more with these couple of questions I have, because it relates more to these questions. And one of them I wanted to ask y'all was, what does being known mean to you? Because we talk about groups, community, all this stuff, but the goal isn't just it's a means to an end, you know, and the group is not the end. The group is a means, and being known by a few and knowing a few is really the end goal we're looking for here.
I mean, I think for me, it's someone that I'm completely safe with, that knows all the stuff that I don't even like to acknowledge about myself, experiences, relationships that really knows me to my core and loves me anyway, like chooses to continue to be my friend. So, you know, Jen talked about this, having, you know, we can go through life saying we don't need that. We have lots of connections other places, but there's something very, very different in a connection where it's safe like that and someone really knows who you are. There's just there's power in that for you, and there's power in that for the person that knows you. Like, I think being known is just, you know, in my experience, it's been people that just know all the ugly stuff, not just the stuff I want people to know, and still show up for me anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's like the last 10%, you know, that we like want to hold on to, but there's I don't even really know the words. Like, there's like a peace and freedom, I guess, in knowing that like somebody or some people know that last 10%. And like still accept you and still, you know, love you for who you are and all that.
And for context, what you're saying is like we tend to have a percentage of ourselves be known by the people around us. And some guy you're meeting on the street, you're giving him 5%. You know, your spouse, you're typically, you know, ideally giving 100%. You know, or that's kind of the goal, you know, within a marriage context. But having like those close friends that you're 100% with is a lot more rare than we probably think. And like you said, the last 10%, like we'll go 90%. But like, if you knew this couple of things, you might not be happy.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if that really answered your question, but
no, for sure. So you would say, you know, being known to you is having that 100%, those 100% people in your life.
I think, for sure. Like, you have to have at least one, and it's different for everybody. Some people need 14 of them, but at least one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people think being known means all the like this terrible stuff about you that nobody else would love or like. But I also think it's somebody that knows that and can help you not hate yourself for that, or not, it's somebody who can speak truth in you, and like, you're a human, like you make mistakes, we all do, like that person who can know that, and instead of just go like, yeah, I know that about you and I'm still gonna be your friend, but can really speak truth into it and say, like, either side of that coin, whether it's like, you're wavering and having some problems staying away from that thing or things, or the opposites, where they can say like, really proud of you, or like, stop beating yourself up. Like, this is a human thing, and you're a human person, and God knows it and loves you, and you're good. So I think it's both. It's somebody that can speak the hard truth, but it can also be loving in that way and know you enough to say, okay, it's time to move on. God has, you need to too, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's also like impossible to be objective with ourselves.
Yeah.
So, you need somebody else to be objective for you on the other side. So like,
Yeah. I think a cool kind of on that 100% concept too is having people who accept like the middle school version of you.
Yeah.
Because I think there's
that's funny that you said
there's
that.
a kid in all of us. There's an awkward middle schooler in all of us. And it just gets so shamed at some point, or we want to fit in, or all this stuff. So, we kind of tighten ourselves up to fit in, and, don't allow ourselves to be silly or goofy or say really bad jokes that don't land. And everybody's like, but we love you anyways. Like,
that was targeted.
No, I was talking about me.
Okay. Well, then it's just me and you, buddy.
No, because I've become somebody who's like, with my 100% people in my life, it's like I'll make a joke and they can go, no, he tried. Like, but I don't have to feel bad about myself. And those are like true being known moments. I don't know why I thought of this, Josh, but there was one specific. It's really silly. It may be TMI for the podcast, but yeah.
Is this something that I said?
No. So I was at your bachelor party. We went skiing in Colorado.
Yeah.
And I have become notorious before that for having a pretty small bladder, meaning like I like to stay hydrated, and I also have to go to the bathroom a lot.
Yeah.
Which when you're skiing up and down a mountain is not necessarily helpful. You're trying to be with a group.
Yeah.
And I was the only snowboarder. No, your buddy Aaron was snowboarding as well, but he was a lot better than I was. So I was notoriously slower than everybody else in the group.
Yeah.
All weekend. But what was great is like I was really like, oh man, I'm just gonna have to like go I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom all the time, and then I'm gonna be so slow coming down the mountain. These guys are gonna get so annoyed with me all weekend. And then at some point, I think I was just like, I don't think they care at all. Like, I think they're just stoked to like be hanging out. And so I was like, whatever, I'll just be slow. And then I would come down and you're like off your skis and they're like, you should have seen this like crash that he did. And I'd be like, all right, cool. Josh was like dying while I was, just making my way down the mountain. And so, but those are the things I'm talking about. Those like really silly things that were like, you got to hide those from people. No, those are the 100% pieces, which now I've just been 100% with everybody who listens to the podcast, but that tends to happen regardless.
Takeaways from this week's podcast: Jeremy has a small bladder.
Yes. Okay, so that's what being known means to y'all. Where have you experienced being known most in your life? Kind of I guess like the specific individuals or people or, that kind of thing.
I've got something off the top of my head.
Ahead.
Okay, so I think in a group context, like specific to a group context, I went through LDG 2019, the year before COVID.
And for context, that's a leadership development group.
Yeah, it's like a 9-month thing. We meet once a month, go through a book every month, talk about it. And I was the youngest by 20 years. Like it was all, adult men, and then there was me. But like I enjoyed it because like I just got to listen to like the wisdom of all these dudes, and it was like that was really cool. On one hand, on the connection side or the community side, one of the coolest things that we did was go on a retreat and share stories, and everybody just like was so open and honest, and I just that's not something that you experience in like normal everyday relationships. And so getting to hear the vulnerability of other people who have lived a lot more life than I have was like inspiring and really cool in a way, and like pushed me to be vulnerable as well in ways that I had never been before. And so that was really cool from a group context, and that just grew made all of us grow way closer. And it made every conversation after that like a level deeper, because we knew the motivations and the things, in people's pasts and why they felt certain ways about things. It made all the conversations better. When you know somebody a lot more, it makes every conversation better after that. And so that was really cool. And, I just learned a lot from that.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, probably Christy? Something similar. I think it's exactly that same thing. Like when you start to share, like sharing stories, it's one thing, like you think that you share stories with people, but when you like actually have to start, like I had a hard time actually telling my story. Like it was difficult because I think what was in my brain is, what happens at home stays at home. Like, your life is not like, it felt like it was a weakness. Like it was being weak to talk about your story unless it was all like this great success story. It sounded like it was whiny. And that's what was in my head, is that you don't share that kind of stuff. It just sounds like you're, grasping for people to say, oh, poor you, or you just talk yourself into this, it's their lies, but into this, like, nobody really wants to hear this, kind of thing. So I think the first time that I was in a group and we shared stories, I think that's the only time in my entire life, and I was at this point probably, I don't know if I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and the first time I ever spoke words out, like your own story, but to speak it out loud and let people hear that. But just like Josh said, like to sit across from people and hear the same thing back, it made it okay for me to tell my story too. Like it was inspiring. Oh, yeah, I'm not alone. Yeah, exactly. And I think that is where one of the first times, and it's crazy to think that you can live your life for years and decades and not really be known by anyone. Like it's very easy, and I totally understand why and how people can live their whole life never really being known. But I think
really good. Why unpack that a little bit? Yeah. Why would you say that happens so easily? I mean, decades without being known.
Yeah, I think because it's this. For me, I feel like this. You always want to do the right thing, and you always want to be good, and you always want to be known for what you do, and you want to represent, like as a child, you want to be known for being the good kid, the ones your parents don't have to worry about, always doing the right thing. It's this whole performance or this whole like image, like keep it zipped up kind of thing. Like this is what you do.
Well, I mean, we're in the age of social media, the highlight reel,
right?
And so it's
exactly,
it's what people see.
Yeah, and I think that's just how I think it's so easy to go through life. And I think our parents and our parents' parents, like they're generations before us that never really learned how to open up and be known. I mean, some did for sure, but I feel like we are a much better generation at asking questions and realizing the importance in being authentic and genuine, and not just a surface like this is what I'm supposed to be, but this is actually who I am. So I think it's real easy to fall back into, and I still catch myself falling back into I want to make sure that I look this way or I'm perceived in this way rather than this is who I really am kind of thing. So I think the same thing, like being, sharing your story and hear other people's stories is just such a way to like mutually share, I don't know what the word, but like being known, like really that connection and that like humanity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think from my own personal experience, being like, where have I experienced being known the most? I would say I've experienced it not so much in a group setting, and more just in like a one-on-one basis, and probably with just a handful of like 3 or 4 individuals. And I think, one of those, like, I'm grateful that I get to sit across the table from him in this podcast every week, for the most part, is Buck. And I think when I was 16 or 17, I started meeting with Buck, and he just told me, hey, I'm here for you anytime you want. Let me know. Like, we'll talk. And I've when I was a teenager and was going through some teenage stuff, call him, like, crying. Hey, man, and he's like, come over. And I show up at his doorstep and gives me a hug. And you know what I mean? Those are those moments where I like that. And then he married us, and, he's still kind of a mentor. And so for me, being known in that one-on-one setting has been really, really significant. That's why anytime I talk to people about counseling or mentoring, it's like, get somebody older than you pouring into you, because I can't picture my life, marriage, any of that without him. There's been a few others like that, and then there's a friend that's been like that. So to where we've said, hey, we're gonna be 100% level friends, and we're gonna share the dirty stuff that you can't share with anybody else. That's like the really grotesque, like awful, sinful parts of you. It's like, here it is, and it's like, all right, man. Well, here's mine this week, know? And it's not this like, I suck, you suck, we all suck, right. Let's go home thing, but it's just being known, and that, and being accepted and loved through another person. Somebody shared with me today, I'm in an LDG group right now, and we had a lunch, and somebody just said, I think a lot of times we get we experience God's love the most, his unconditional love the most, through another person loving us through what they've discovered about us. And that, I think, is really true. You understand new layers of God through being accepted by another person, you know?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think that, you know, you saying that there was one-on-one versus a group for you, I think, you know, and it popped up into memory for me with, it can be like therapy or a counselor. Like, you know, I remember back in college going and sitting across from somebody I was having such a hard time. And, you know, it wasn't a friend, but it was a professional that could sit across from me and said, I remember one of the questions was like, what is your favorite color? And I'm like, I don't know. And I remember thinking, like, she started to really know who I was and realized, like, wow, you have really spent your entire life trying to be what you thought people wanted you to be, and go home and figure out what your favorite color is, you know? And like
think for yourself.
Yeah, think for yourself. And I thought, you know, for someone, and it took a lot to be that open and honest with her, but for her, like, start to feel like you're known by someone, even if it doesn't have, you know, it could be different for different people. It could be a buddy, it could be a group, it could be a therapist, it could be a pastor, it could be anybody that can see you and pull things out of you that you don't see and aren't able to pull out, you know, yourself. But I remember that specific therapist sent me on, I mean, one of the best things I ever did, she said, go home, go in your closet, and I want you to pull out everything in your closet that doesn't make you happy, that doesn't ignite something in you, and put it in a suitcase and put it in your bed. You don't have to throw it away, but just take it down and put it away. And I remember going through my closet, pulling all this stuff out, and I almost had nothing left in my closet.
Wow.
And, you know, and I think that's a way of being known. I think she knew that that's what I needed. And I do think that God puts these people in our lives to help us see ourselves like he sees us and figure out who we are. But it, you know, can come in a variety of different shapes and forms. And, you know, it could be a single person, it could be a group, it could be any number of people. But, you know, you saying that made me remember, like, she really knew me and knew what I needed to discover who I was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's so much to what you just said. I feel like we all have probably a closet of expectations that we put on ourselves that aren't the real us, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, how many of us would like empty out our lives and just have a couple of things left?
Right.
You know?
But what a gift if we could do that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you said something, golly, I can't remember what it was, but I was thinking about this the whole time. Like, I think almost one of the coolest things to get out of a community group experience is like finding those like one or two people. Because I would agree. I think, you know, I think in a group setting, your story is not necessarily for everyone, but it's not for no one. And so like, even if in a group setting, it may not necessarily be appropriate to go like all the 100%, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't with somebody. So like, if you can be in a group and find one other person or two other people that you can meet with separately and like do that, I think that's one of the coolest things to me about community groups is like finding those types of people.
Yeah. And I think that's true too, because I've experienced that in community groups where like all, you know, a group setting where I maybe want to go like 60 or 70%. That's where I feel comfortable. But having those couple of individuals, you know, that I am still going 100% with. And that doesn't mean the 60 or 70% being known isn't valuable.
Right.
One of the things, because I found being known, you know, going through college and even early marriage is like, I found that mainly through people older than me. And so it turned me into a little bit of an old soul. And I actually found I have a hard time connecting with people my age. And so, but one of the things I've missed out on in the midst of that is just what you'd call play. Like just having fun to where like now when it's game night, I'm like, let's go. I love game night. Like it's okay, we're not going 100%, but man, if we get to do game night, like if I could have a community group that was game night every night, I would be so stoked. But that's where for me, I've found just, you know, a couple of individuals that I love hanging with and just, you know, having a cigar with and just that play aspect. That's a piece of community that I've missed for years, and it brings life to me. You know, I've missed it for sure.
That to me, and being an extrovert, like I gain energy from that. I know you have to like save up for those kind of nights, but being an extrovert, like those are like the recharge moments for me, and those are like just the pure fun, like, you know, being kids with each other, almost like going back to that middle school, like that is almost as important to me as the 100% conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
It's almost like we need permission to have fun. I mean, it's strange, like you don't, but it's like if you can be somewhere where people give you the permission you don't need, but permission to be silly and have fun. I mean, and I think that's just a great way to connect. Like that is being real, and that's being human, and like we all need to be silly and have a place where we can do that.
Yeah. Have y'all seen, it was making me think of, have y'all seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
No.
Yes.
Oh, it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Love that movie.
I can watch it like maybe once a month, and I
Wait,
love it.
hang on. Is that the one where he works for Life magazine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
he
yeah,
travels.
yeah.
So
and he like daydreams all the time.
Yeah,
and does all the crazy
So
stuff.
Ben Stiller has just become this like adult, and there's like an adventurous child inside of him. And there's this scene where he's trying to impress this girl at work, and then he like sees her in the park, and she's with her son, and he's got a skateboard, and he's like trying to do a kickflip. And then Ben Stiller, like the girl he's trying to impress is turned around, but he's like, hey, let me see that thing. And then you find out that the character, who's all like just a tie, like you would never, he's just like crazy good at the skateboard, and he just starts like doing kickflips and going around. And of course, like the lady he's trying to impress totally misses it.
Yeah.
But the boy is like, oh my gosh. But then he gets off the skateboard, and he's just like this boring adult again.
Yeah.
And
Isn't it like a daydream that like he's imagining all this stuff?
No, he really was
he
like
was.
really,
Okay,
really
okay.
good at that.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen that movie in a long time, but that's a great movie.
Yeah, that's a good movie on like becoming a kid again, you know, and loosening up. Anyways, I wanted to end with one question. On Sunday, Jen talked about 5 things that kind of keep us from community. 5 kind of postures, ideas. One was the pandemic. I don't know. We could probably talk about that ad nauseum, but the pandemic was one. Another one is I don't need it. She talked about kind of living in the American individualistic culture. Not a bad thing, but it has consequences. We've mentioned some of those. I don't have time. Been there, done that. Josh, you mentioned that one. And then number 5, if people really knew me, and we've talked about kind of that percentage language as well. As you guys look at these in your own stories, and you may have already mentioned already, but where do you wrestle with it the most? Which one of these do you wrestle with the most?
I mean, I think I don't have time for it. I think that's what Keith and I convinced ourselves. We're like, we're both working, we've got kids, like there's no time for this. But for us, it was really something we didn't have time not to do once we got into it, if that makes any sense. Like it really did help us be more intentional in kind of all aspects of our life. And so we gave a lot of pushback to like, maybe next time, or it's not for us, or, we just didn't think we had time. We're too busy. We're just too busy for this. And the truth of it is, anything that you put some intentionality behind, you can make time for. And this was something that our marriage needed, our parenting needed, just our family needed. And I think we needed individually. And so the time thing became not an issue once we figured out how to, work our schedule, and that did not take away, nothing suffered as a result.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, I would say the time thing. I think just busy working parents, you just think you don't have time for it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think if people really knew me is the thing that like hits me the hardest, because that's the one that everybody you could say that you don't feel this way, but I guarantee you everybody feels this way. It's like, if people really knew me, whatever. But like, that's the very reason that you need to like find your community and like find the people that you trust and can be 100% with. So yeah, that's all I got for that.
Yeah, that's good. I would say for me, it's the I don't have time one, or maybe not I don't have time, but like it's inconvenient,
right?
In the sense that I'm tired. Grayson has a bedtime. We got to do bath at like 6:30. Well, community group starts at 6. So how's that gonna work? Like, there's all of these things, and it's just like, well, it's really inconvenient. It's a whole lot easier to not do it, but then there are consequences for that, which we've talked about. So,
as the resident introvert, how do you give or like create the mental space for a community in like? Because I know a lot of introverts in my life, and I know that like being around people is not something that comes naturally to them. Versus for me, I'm like, y'all want to meet? Let's do it. I don't, let's meet with I'll hang out with everybody. So like, what encouragement would you have for other introverts? Sorry, I'm flipping the script here a little bit.
Well, I like how I've become the resident introvert.
Well, you're just like you're an introvert. That's
I would say 2 things: play. Because play, even though I'm an introvert, I love hanging out and having a good time.
That's good.
And then 2, 5 a.m. Getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, hour and a half before everybody else is up in the world, being alone, got all the energy in the world.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's how I'd answer that. So, I would say if I'm not getting up early and I'm just around people, and now being a dad is even more so. Like, every day I come home and I'm drained from people. I'm now not giving energy to my son and my wife, and so I need that time.
So you're saying like finding your own alone time, creating your own alone time.
Yep.
Well, and you're probably not the only introvert in your group.
Yeah.
And so probably learning and sharing different ways that you all do that. Because it is different,
That's so funny. I have to do the opposite. I've got to spend time around people so that I can go and find have my alone time.
Yeah. We're all different. Yep. But getting up early is interesting because everybody thinks you're the only one up in the world. And then you talk to a lot of people and you discover, a lot of people are up really early in the morning.
Yeah.
Just nobody's up like waving on their like porch at 5 a.m. in the morning. Or if you are, you're probably closing your curtains, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, well, thank you all very much for being on the podcast and sharing your unique stories. And, like I said, we do these group Sundays and we talk for 30 minutes and we've just learned over the years, nothing helps people understand the importance of community in their life more than a story. And that's why we always try to capture a story like Tim's story this past week, just how powerful that was. And that's why I wanted to, get y'all's perspective and your unique stories today. So very appreciate it. And I wanted to encourage anybody who's watching or listening, and if you were there on Sunday, or if you're just generally, 6 months later, make sure to go to mpaustin.com/what's next, and you can find group environments for you. You can filter, you can click, I want to connect with people, I want to find people to hang out with. You can go to meetups, you can go to groups, and it's a great way just to get plugged in. And we hope, we pray that you have an incredible experience and that you are known fully, because that's our goal for you. So anyways, thank you all again.
Thank you.
And we're going to be in part 4, wrapping up the series No Regrets this week. So we will see everybody Sunday.